Hey guys, it's Ben again, back with our quail adventure. I have been doing a food waste experiment and I have learned a lot. You know, we get stuck in bad habits and how we do things, and I've cut my food waste way down and even made cleaning much easier by raising my water and the way I built things. So we're going to do a few upgrades right now. Let me show you something. I made this for my feeders. It raises them up, but this is only 3/8. That's good for like the first 3 days. So we're gonna make a thicker version of that. And these were just some scrap cutouts. And I use these to raise my waters, and they've done a great job, but cleaning them, like they're rough. It's kind of a pain in the tail to clean. When they get poo on these, especially on the bottom one, it's like a lot of scrubbing. I'm kind of tired of like soaking these and cleaning them. So I ran across some nice pallet wood. I got a 2x6. So we're going to get the hole saw out and we're going to remake this stuff and get it to the standard and the right height that I need to be raising these. So I don't have to like have 5 of these boards in there to raise my feeder. The less I have to stack, the better. So that is our goal. All right, so here's my modified feeder, which you better watch the video on that if you want to save some food cost. And here's our standard chick waterer. And as you can see, I actually modified this feeder based off the height of this chick water. I made it just a hair taller, I think like an 1/8. But what's great is I'm raising this 3/4. I thought it was 5/8, but when I just measured this is 3/4 high. So that is my goof up. I'm raising it higher than what I realized. But I take my chicks out at 36 hours. And what's great about this is like the perfect height from day one. Like, I put my waterer in there. Once they find the water, I will immediately, like 5 or 6 hours later, raise it. I mean, that day. And then if I add chicks later, they see the other ones going up, standing up and drinking out of it. So raising it 3/4 off the bottom of your brooder is amazing. Keeps this clean. Which I'm going to make a video step by step on the heights to raise them later. But then I've got this, and I realized I'm not raising this high enough. But the thing is they've got to kind of reach up here and peck. So I need it a little bit lower, at least for the first few days, so they can get up there and keep the food going. After about 4 days, man, or day 3, you can start raising this up, which I'm going to make a whole series on that as well. But today, I've got a 2x6. And what that's going to do, that's going to be a base. And then right here, we've got some 1x6. So we are going to redo all of this and clean them up. We want this stuff to be nice and sanded down really fine, like furniture sanded down, so it's less porous, makes it easier to clean, isn't all rough. So that is going to be our goal. Redo these, redo this one, and we're going to make 2 sets of each. So I got to get my hole saws out, and we'll go over the sizes that I'm going to be using. All right, so hole saw sizes. Now the hole size, you got to measure the inside of this, but I'm using a 5-inch hole saw for my Farm Babies feeder. Then the insert is only 3 3/8. So I've got that bit right here, and it fits over that perfectly. And then these are 4 inches. And this little insert right here, it's 2 3/4, but I'm going to reuse this. It's perfectly fine. But 2 3/4 is perfect and fits right in the bottom of that water, just great. So don't need to remake those. I'm gonna set that aside. Now I am gonna be using my drill press so I don't have to hold it. One of the big things when I made these, you can see they're like wampus. You know, when you're doing it by hand and trying to drill through this, they get a little angled and messed up, and I want them straight and smooth. Plus, these aren't exactly wood hole saws. These are cheap hole saws. If you've got a good set, it's gonna make it a lot easier. All right, so I am gonna make 4 1.5 for my water, same for my feeder, and then I'm gonna make 2 of the 3/4 for my waters, then 2 more of the 3/4 for my feeders. And what that does, it gives me where I can stack them. You know, start off with this, upgrade to the 1.5, and as they grow, put this on the 1.5. So it allows me kind of to do building blocks as they're growing, and that's all I should need for each one of these setups in a good solid flat surface. You know, if you do have a hanger or something, this gives you an idea of, you know, how much you need to raise them, which I am going to be making a video on that as I was discussing what age you need to raise them, but that's a whole different topic. I'm going to get my drill press set up. We're going to take our time. We're going to get all these remade to the right height. I've got my 2 little inserts that are going to go into my feeder. I've got my 2 raising blocks for my water, and then I've got my 2 raising blocks for my feeder. Now, all this is 3/4, and this right here is a 1/2 inch. I'm going to have to sand maybe a 1/16 off of it, but it's going to insert into the bottom of that feeder and stabilize it. It's basically going to replace this wood piece. And again, I'm going to reuse these for my waters. They work really well. But what I've done here, got a bolt, a couple of flat washers. I'm going to put this on my drill, and I'm going to smooth these rough edges off, and I'll be able to use this on all of these. I've got me like 1,000, then I've got me some 150 to start with, 1,000, then I've got some 1,500 just to knock some of the rough edges off, and that's going to attach to my drill since my belt sander's down, and we'll make light work of this and get everything smoothed out. I really like this wood. It's really smooth already on top and bottom. It's pretty high grade. So when I smooth these edges out, it's going to be really hard. It's going to get rid of that porousness that it has right now. It's going to make it much easier to clean and a less poo stickage. And I've learned one thing. These hole saw bits are not very good. I'm going to end up having to get me some better one. They're more for thick material and plastic. They're not going to cut through this heavy wood. So I'm going to take a jig tomorrow, and we are going to make some circles on the table saw. And I got a wood bit. I recessed the back, put this bolt in here, which that bolt is the perfect size for these holes. And guess what? Doing that centered, now I've got a jig. I can put it on my table saw, cut down a square block pretty close to the size I need. I'm going to trim it down on my table or my chop saw first. Then I can just set it over this and very carefully run it back and forth and trim this down. Safe, but this is a little sketchy. So what I'm doing here is I've drawn a bunch of circles for my base. And what this is going to do, this is going to allow me to get my little chop saw. I'm going to cut blanks. I'm just going to cut them right down the center first between this. Then I'm going to cut off all this excess. That way when I go to put it on my table saw, all I'm going to be doing is doing the fine cutting to get this circle going. that is the idea. I still need to drill a hole dead center of these as well. I'm gonna do the same thing on these, and then I'm gonna make a couple of these with 3-inch holes, and I'll redo that jig for that. I've never cut circles like that before, but I'm barely even gonna have to sand these. I mean, I'm gonna hit them with that 1000 grit just to give them a polish. But that good sharp blade, man, it made light work of those, and that jig was solid. It wasn't, you know, believe it or not, it wasn't as sketchy as it looked. Got my hands a little close to the saw, and I should have taped where I was gonna be cutting, a little bit of splintering. But this stuff's gonna be stacked, and it is gonna stack perfectly. Got some serious upgrades here. I mean, significant difference. That sanding has this so smooth. I mean, I'm more worried about this end. And this top, I did a little bevel on this, and the feeder like sits down in it. I didn't notice this before, but see, that's got an angle upwards. So this was just a little bit taller, but I hit that little edge right there, and that got it to center down on it perfectly. And also, man, as you can see here, these things, because the way I did it, they're like perfect, the exact same size, because I doubled them up when I was smoothing them out. But definitely an upgrade from this. I've got some green stain. It's not going to match exactly, but I'm going to stain the pieces green and seal those up for my feeder. Then I've got some red stain. It's like barn stain. I'm going to stain these up and get that wood sealed really well. That way it's going to kind of, again, seal up some of the pores on it and make it much easier to clean, at least. All right, just to give you an idea, this is going to be the insert the feeder is going to sit around. Now, this is like stage 1, essentially. So what I've got to do is I've got to cut one of these dowels. That way it's only halfway in this board. The reason why is because when I go to stack this one on this in the future, if there's a dowel in this one, so this will insert. So basically, you've got to keep in mind your depth of these dowels, because it's what's going to hold all this together. But I'm going to go ahead, we're going to speed things up. I'm going to get these inserted, and you can see how I'm doing it. Now I've set these a little bit lower, a little bit taller, and the tallest. It's, you know, top, middle, bottom. Now what that's going to do is right here, it's a little bit shorter down, but I couldn't make it. I could only insert it so far into this block so it would stack on this one. Now the reason why I'm not gluing these is because I stained them, and the stain got into the holes. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to have to kind of roughly drill out the bottom. That way when I stack them, it's going to stack it over easy. But these aren't going to come out easy. I had to tap them in with a hammer. Don't have to worry about gluing them. And in the future, if I do have to tap them out, maybe to clean them or something, I can just put a screwdriver in here, pop this out. Not a problem. But now I've got to drill out these bottoms, clean out some of the stain so I can make these stackable. All right, so I'm obviously not going to stack it to this full height. I'm doing a food waste experiment, and I find that 3/4 inches, raising it by that height, works out pretty good. So if you watch my food waste experiment, I'm coming out with I'm going to do a third one to implement this.
But what I'm going to start off with is my original one, which is only like 3/8, and that's just for the first couple days. Then I'm going to move to this one, which is 3/4, and then as they grow, I will move it to this one. This is to hold my feeder into place. Basically, that little insert fits right in the bottom of my feeder. I like how I stained these green to match it. Yeah, I know that's cute. I just happen to have some of that. But the insert holds the feeder into place so they can't knock it off. And then, you know, you got 1.5 inches. Well, as they grow, add another 3/4 inch to the base. Okay, you see where we're going with this. Then when I need to add another 3/4, which this right here is basically, when they get to this height, they're coming out of the brooder. When it hits this height, that's when I'm gonna clean everything out. I'm gonna move to this height, and I'm gonna add my pipe feeder, which I've got a 2-inch custom pipe feeder I made. That way they'll have access to this. I'll get the pipe feeder. When I see them start eating out of my pipe feeder, bam, these are gonna get removed, and then they'll use the pipe feeder for a couple days, and I'm gonna pull them out of the brooder. But this is how I'm gonna stack and raise my feeders. I didn't want to do like a wire system. I've done that, and when you hang them, when they start getting bigger, they can just knock your feeder around, spilling the food. So that's why I'm not doing that. I decided to go this route. It seemed to be working very efficiently. But now I've got to get my ones I've made for my water done, which is the exact same concept. All right, so about to put these into the test in my Series 2 food waste experiment. So the bottom of these waterers have this little bitty insert in the bottom. And these are just your standard chick waterers. So I found it was actually a piece of plastic, and it sits in there really good. I've been using it on my older system, you know, which was junk. And now we've made some nice junk. But the issue was the dowels. I had to make this one and the mid-level just big enough for that insert to go on. It concerned me for a second. Then when I realized when I stacked them, it still holds really well. It doesn't, you know, I don't have to worry about those birds, you know, being so little knocking this off, you know. And then with that, when it's full of water, they're not going to be able to knock this over so easy. I am going to make sure that water stays at least half full at this height. But hopefully I won't be using it very long at that level. Because I'm going to be transitioning to the chicken nipples. But very excited to put these to the test. Going to put them in there today. And then I'm going to try the different levels in my food experiment 3. I'm already halfway through. This is my second experiment using these. And that is what has inspired me to remake them. But got these. Got my new blocking to raise my feeder. We're going to go put that all to use right now. Now, right now, I've got it raised 2 1/4. Raise it another 3/4 of an inch. And that's just enough for them to reach up to it. And I also made me another little platform for that water to go on, which I need to raise that up. Yeah, I think they'll be good with that. Yeah, I think they're going to be fine with that height. But the feeder, I think that's right at the perfect height for them, right at 9 days old. All right, so I've been using this kind of a newer stack system, and I started using it on my food experiment too, and really dialed in the exact days and when to raise them. And it's been very successful for me. Now I am going to be doing a food experiment 3 coming up, and it's kind of going to release my finalized results of how I'm going to be brooding my chicks from now on. But what's kind of cool about how I'm stacking and raising these is I noticed something over this last, trial and error and doing different things with my hatches, that I had chicks that had like
splayed leg, and I had some with curled toes. And the crazy thing is because I'm almost immediately raising the food and water, that chicks that are having foot issues and stuff, it was kind of resolving itself, which was very shocking to me. I've actually taped toes and done many things to help them, with leg issues. And the last couple of hatches I've done, I've put all the chicks in there, and I haven't lost a single chick to a leg issue yet. Now, not saying if one has splayed leg, I'm not sure if this would help them or not. But what it is doing is it is forcing them to stand up taller to access their food and water, which they are perfectly capable of doing that when they're 3 or 4 days old. So forcing them to stand up taller is actually resolving some of the issues that I've prior had with just, it's not a lot of chicks, but the couple of chicks that do have foot issues, their feet are spreading out and they're resolving themselves with me. I'm not having to help them and tape their toes and do things I was doing before. So that was a very interesting result of me raising my waterers and feeders consistently. Now, one thing I did learn when I was making these is I only needed 1.5 inches tall and a 3/4 tall block for my waterer. That was plenty of height up to 2 weeks old, or actually 10 to 11 days old, because me personally, I'm actually adding a small container with chicken nipples, and right at a 10 to 12 days old, they are strong enough to actually use the chicken nipples. So, day 10 through 12, I am teaching them how to transfer over into 2 chicken nipples at that age, which I tried that a little bit earlier, and I've been doing that, and it's been working very well. Now, I did a little bit of work to these because I plan on using them quite a bit. I want to be able to clean and take care of them without them getting nasty. Now, if you don't have a table saw, which what I did was a little sketchy, but I did it safely. Just had my hands a little close to the blades, so would not suggest doing that or building that jig. I could have used my chop saw and cut around that circle and then just sanded the edges down. That probably would have been a lot safer, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you've got a jigsaw or some other method of cutting, probably would be a lot safer to use those, or get you a good set of hole saw bits that are the size of the bottom of your feeder and waterer. One of the big things about me making those perfect circles was because I've made some when I first kind of started doing this, and if you don't make them to fit the bottom of the water and feeder perfectly, if they're tucked underneath and 1/2 inch, when they're chicks, they somehow get wedged under there. I've had it happen. So that was kind of the big thing about making these, was making something that's nice, easy to clean, fit my water and feeder well. Now, if you want to know how to use these and how I'm stacking them, unfortunately, I'm going to be doing my final food waste experiment coming up very soon. I'm going to track, I'm going to implement everything I've been doing. My new feeder, my modified feeder. I actually made some feeders, get to check that out, and how I'm going to be using my food containment box around my feeder. So there are some things to look forward to. It's taken a lot of trial and error to get to this point, so be patient. It'll be coming out soon. But guys, I hope you liked the video. Like, subscribe, because I've got some great ideas coming right up. Y'all have a blessed day.